Senate Subcommittee on Border Security and Immigration will come to order. The purpose of today's hearing is to examine the devastation that criminal aliens have caused in communities across the United States. In particular, we aim to show the American people how the realities on the ground are very different from the narrative peddled by the mainstream media. Rather than truthfully and honestly reporting the facts, media outlets have spread misinformation, allowing harmful, false rhetoric to dominate the airways. The result of these falsehoods is that radical far-left activists have taken to the street and targeted and demonized the very people who are charged with enforcing the law, laws that Congress has passed, and that would be ICE immigration enforcement officers. The first false narrative I want to address is a claim that illegal aliens are not criminals, but law-abiding individuals. Neither the Democrats nor the media are willing to tell the public the truth, that the moment an alien illegally enters the United States, they have committed a crime under the U.S. law to enter the U.S. legally. America is a country of laws, and we expect anyone who wishes to come to our country to obey those laws. Another false narrative peddled by the far left is that illegal aliens are not receiving due process when they are arrested by Immigration and Customs Enforcement. This naturally begs the question, what sort of process are these individuals actually due? The idea that somebody could break our laws, enter our country illegally, and then be entitled to all the rights and privileges of an American citizen is a little far-fetched, to be sure. While the Fifth Amendment to the United States Constitution applies to all individuals within the United States, illegal aliens are not entitled to the same level of due process as American citizens. The fact of the matter is that by the time any alien has received an order of removal, they have had all the due process they are owed under the law. Most aliens with final orders of removal have been in the immigration system for almost a decade. Many have had the opportunity to have their day in court, the very essence of due process, but they neglected to show up. Another false narrative is that ICE is not targeting the worst of the worst criminals. But the fact of the matter is that as we speak, there are 291,141 criminal aliens in the United States today who have final orders of removal. Just this morning in the Senate Judiciary Committee, a comment was made that ICE is targeting gardeners. Well, 291,141 criminal aliens who are under final orders of removal are still in the United States. For this fiscal year alone, 213,279 criminal aliens with final orders of removal already have convictions, while 78,546 have pending criminal charges. Even more disturbing is the fact that 282,194 of these criminal aliens are still roaming free and not in ICE custody yet. There are many criminal aliens in the United States continuing to commit heinous crimes, even to this day. Some of these criminals are part of transnational criminal networks and organized gangs. All you need to do is look at the posters in this room to see some of the worst criminals ICE has apprehended recently: murderers, rapists, pedophiles, and sex traffickers. One of our witnesses here today, Sheriff Roy Boyd, can attest to the types of crimes he sees, even in Goliad, the Texas county with a population of less than 8,000. The Friday before the July the 4th weekend, Sheriff Boyd's officers arrested a 29-year-old Iranian national who entered the United States illegally, not once, but twice. The first time this criminal committed a violent aggravated felony in Indiana, and while he was charged for the crime, he received a suspended sentence in exchange for his removal from the United States. But his crime spree did not end there. Despite being deported, he returned to the United States again, illegally. And what did he do when he came back? He murdered a man in Galveston, Texas, a murder that was caught on video. Thankfully, he was arrested less than 12 hours later with the murder weapon still in his possession. This crime should never have happened. I want to remind my colleagues on the other side of the aisle that there was a time in the not-so-distant past when they agreed that criminal aliens should be deported. But it seems like amnesia has set in, especially because we now happen to have a president in office who's restored the rule of law and now requires enforcement of existing laws. Recall the deporter-in-chief? That would be President Obama. And who was in charge of immigration enforcement during President Obama's term in office? None other than Tom Homan, President Trump's current border czar. In fact, Tom Homan received a Presidential Rank Award during the Obama administration for his service as the head of ICE's enforcement and removal operations. The laws haven't changed since President Obama was in office. Only the party of the president in office has changed. And today we have a pro-enforcement president who was elected in a decisive victory, winning the Electoral College, the popular vote, and every single swing state. He was elected in large part, I'd submit, because of his pro-immigration enforcement provisions, something 54% of Americans support, including Hispanic Americans in my state, many of whose families have come here lawfully and followed all the rules. American voters know full well that deterrence is an important part of immigration enforcement and preventing the flow of criminal aliens into the United States, which means swift apprehension, detention, and deportation. And that works. The Congress just recently passed what's been called the One Big Beautiful Bill that includes billions of additional dollars for ICE detention facilities and for more personnel to make sure that our laws on the books that Congress passed and were signed into law are actually enforced. The state of Florida has stepped up to the plate recently, helping the administration to open a detention facility that's come to be known as Alligator Alcatraz. I'm hopeful that other states will step up to help in similar ways. If we could find a way to make something like this work in Texas, I would strongly support it. And I'd encourage our governor, as well as Secretary Noem, to explore the possibility of locating future detention facilities in Texas. The far-left activists and the mainstream media who support their efforts continue to fan the flame with their rhetoric and misinformation. This is done with one goal in mind: to do anything and everything to undermine President Trump's domestic agenda, just as they did during his first term. And finally, I'd like to end my remarks with a reminder. We're here today to remind the public of the real tragedy of President Biden's open border policies, the hundreds of victims of criminal illegal aliens, crimes that could have been avoided if the laws on the books had simply been enforced. That's why we have two wonderful angel moms here today. First, Maria Vega, the mother of slain border agent Javier Vega Jr., who was killed August the 3rd, 2014. Javier's angelversary, as Ms. Vega calls the date of his death, is less than 2 weeks away. Javier died nearly 11 years ago, but the fact remains he was murdered by illegal aliens who never should have been in the United States in the first place. I was proud to honor Javier and work with the National Border Patrol Council in the Rio Grande Valley Border Patrol sector to have a Border Patrol checkpoint named in his honor. I also want to welcome Tammy Nobles, the mother of Kayla Hamilton. This is a particularly difficult week for her because Kayla's birthday is July the 24th, this Thursday, and the anniversary of her death is July 27th, this upcoming Sunday. And I'm grateful that she's willing to join us here today and tell her story. Ms. Nobles said the most joyful day for her was when her daughter was born, and the saddest day for her is her daughter's heaven date, July the 27th. Kayla was viciously murdered by an MS-13 gang member who originally entered the United States as an unaccompanied minor and was released into the custody of an unvetted sponsor. We're honored to have both Maria and Tammy with us today to share their stories and tell about the loss of their loved ones and how it continues to impact their lives today. I also want to welcome Victor Avila. Victor knows all too well the price that our law enforcement officers pay just to do their jobs. Victor and his partner were shot by gang members. Victor was seriously wounded and his partner lost his life on that day. I intend to introduce a bill in the Senate to honor Ms. Noble's daughter, Kayla Hamilton. The bill will require that HHS conduct mandatory checks on all unaccompanied minors and bar criminal alien sponsors from being allowed to assume custody of such children. A similar bill was introduced by Representative Russell Fry in the House. You may ask, why is it necessary to pass a law to get Health and Human Services to do mandatory checks on unaccompanied minors and to bar criminal alien sponsors? Well, that's because laws barring that do not currently exist, and we need to make sure that this can never happen again. And now I yield to Ranking Member Padilla to give his opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, everybody.